Rites of Passage. In ancient Sparta, a young male's ascension to adulthood was marked by the agoga, a complex series of physical trials and military training that ushered him into the next phase of life. Similarly, the Hamar tribe of southwest Ethiopia has the Akuli Bula, where young boys are stripped naked before the gathered community and must jump over the village's bulls at least 4 times to demonstrate their readiness to join the ranks of the other Maza, grown men of the village who have already completed the trial. The Yanomami's coming-of-age ritual, the Rirawa, culminates in a multi-day ceremony where the tribe's history and mythology is passed down from one generation to the next through a dance so arduous and elaborate it leaves its participants' feet bloodied and torn. It also leaves them transformed, ready to move on to the start of adulthood. In Western culture, we have our own rites of passage that strive for similar ends. We have bar and bat mitzvahs, quinceañeras, and that most American ritual of all, high school graduation. My daughter recently completed this last, and I found it a profound and effective ritual of transformation. There were commemorative sweatshirts and socks, emotional rites, tributes and trips, a walkabout to Hawaii, a proto-baptism, fully clothed, the whole class jumped into the school's pool, and a prom. As I looked at the packed calendar of events, it was easy for me to imagine that by the end, my daughter would be ready to move on. Still, I wondered, what about me? Where was my rite of passage? I've never been a parent before, and the transition from this all-consuming vocation of raising children to something entirely else feels like it too deserves some form of ceremony, a rite of transition to ease us poor worrywarts on to the next stage of our lives. It's not just that I'm sad, and don't get me wrong, I am very sad. There is so much I will miss about being a parent. My wife and I took parenting seriously, from grinding our own super gruel out of dried beans and rice to learning the tenets of rye, a mode of parenting developed in a Hungarian orphanage after World War II. We worked hard at this. The dividends have been huge, if intangible. How do you quantify the joy of belting out the lyrics to Vampire Weekend with your 6th grader, discovering the majesty of the California wilderness together, making TikToks or the magic of overcoming your fears? The moments of revelation, transmutation, and apotheosis have been too numerous, and also too quotidian to enumerate. How do you say goodbye to that bottomless store of awe? There are failures, too, we must contend with, and part of the end is coming to terms with the things you didn't accomplish or achieve. My daughter never joined the tennis team or got into debate. We never used that screen printing kit she got for Christmas. We never built a pool and became the house where all the kids hang out. That vision you had for a perfect childhood, neat shelves of wooden toys carefully labeled, is irrelevant now. The childhood has been created. It is a finished work whose flaws and flourishes you must simply accept. Believe me, it's not easy. There's also a lot of stress for the adults around graduation as you send your kids out into what seems like a cruel and crazy world. Will the foundations you've built actually hold? Will she choose the right college? And how the fuck are you going to pay for that college when you find yourself at the end of a middling career in a dying trade? Also, graduation itself involves a lot of coordination and time, and for some of the parents, myself included, it involves additional responsibilities. I somehow got roped into creating a compilation reel for graduation night. A supercut of all the most important moments from the past 6 years, athletics, performing arts, academics, that had to represent all 120 kids and their varied interests. The idea was to screen it as the final event of the entire graduation celebration for the most media-savvy generation the world has ever known. It was an insane amount of pressure. I've been a film executive and a producer. I've directed 1 episode of television. I've never edited anything. I also suffer from a profound case of imposter syndrome. For the 9 months leading up to the graduation, I woke up every night at 3 a.m. worried about the bills, the college choices, and most of all, the supercut. I hadn't shot enough footage. I hadn't reviewed any of the hours of footage the other moms had sent me. I hadn't collected the photos of all 120 kids, and I had no plan for accomplishing any of this. I had an editor friend who said he would clean up any assembly I sent him provided I cut it in Premiere. I had no idea how to use Premiere. I was also part of a group of parents who volunteered to write the Senior Serenade, a humorous rewrite of a handful of pop songs to reflect and include the iconic and funny moments from the past 6 years. To illustrate how emotionally messed up I had become by this point, I will tell you that when I finished my pass on a version of Harry Styles' As It Was, inspired by my cousin's relentless text to his daughter during her freshman year, "Answer the phone. Dad, I'm off on my own. Parents' Day happened last week. Come Thanksgiving, we'll speak. I wept like I'd lost my firstborn at sea." And if all this weren't enough, one of the parents involved in the songwriting group let it drop that on the night we would be singing the Senior Serenade, we would also be performing a choreographed dance. a dance. The moms in the songwriting group asked me if I would be willing to participate in the performance and perhaps help recruit additional dads to participate. Sure, I offered weakly. I think my voice might have cracked. It's possible my testicles reascended into my abdomen. To be clear, I really wanted to be supportive. I had enjoyed working on the songs and getting to know the other parents, but I, like a lot of us, have a complicated relationship with the whole concept of dance. Intellectually, I understand that dance is as innate a human need as sleep or hunger. Anyone who has raised a child from infancy can attest to this. Put on any tune with a beat, and you'll see your toddler suddenly squat and kick and fist bump to the rhythm like a drunk bridesmaid at a bumpin' wedding. They can't help themselves. It's primal. But my first introduction to dance as a social construct made it hard to reconcile that primal urge with what passed for acceptable social behavior in the realm of dance. In my 4th grade year, we were dragged once a week in our blue blazers and penny loafers to the community room at our local church to attend dancing school. There, with the boys on one side of the room and the girls on the other, we were taught the mating rituals, soulless and chaste, of the upper class. Dance, apparently, was a big part of it. And like an unfortunate marital match, we were taught over and over again that dance was an easy thing to fuck up. Whether it was the foxtrot or the waltz or the cha-cha-cha, you were always fucking it up. You missed a step. You were offbeat. You weren't leading. You were being led. Dance, you learned, was actually not primal. It was complicated, pedantic, and hard. My dance teacher's strident direction, and step, and step, and step, haunted all of my early sexual encounters. It was difficult to understand why anyone would even want to do this thing. Dancing school poisoned dance for me for a very long time. But I did have a brief honeymoon period with the act of dance in the mid-'80s when I was on the cusp of puberty. Despite its uptight, repressive impulses, my town's social life did seem to revolve around dances. Fancy people, when they were really blowing it out, would throw a dinner dance, a dinner party replete with full band and dance floor. The adults would go nuts. Booze was the main ingredient for success, and the town was rife with alcoholics ready to pull their backs out if it meant they'd destroy at the limbo. But the younger kids had their dances too. My summer camp's big summer nighttime event was a dance party at the beach. I lived for it. Some of my happiest memories include chasing my friends along the water's edge during long summer dusks, eating ice cream, and flirting with the girls. But if I'm totally honest, for me, dancing was the main event. I loved being out there on the floor, showing off, getting close enough I might touch a sun-bronzed shoulder. It felt reckless. It felt dangerous. I even won the dance contest one year, securing a pair of concert tickets to any concert produced by John Scher in the tri-state area. I never claimed them, though. I wasn't dancing for the prize. I was dancing for the act itself. Of course, high school and college and the onset of puberty changed all that. It's hard to access dance's pure joy when you're mortified by your own body. In a world where you were mocked for your taste in music, the way you spoke, and how you were dressed, how could you not be mocked for your impulse to gyrate spasmodically in front of your peers? Even when I felt that old desire to let my freak flag fly, I rarely indulged the impulse. I smoked a lot of pot back then, and was stumbling through every day in a pretty intense state of paranoia. I was half convinced I was the punchline of every friend group's inside joke. I didn't have the gumption to take on more contempt. Things eased up for me a bit once I was in the working world, because in the working world, you never dance. In fact, there are many grown-up dudes, and women, who just say, sorry, I don't dance. But you do. You know you do. Alone when that one song hits just so, you fucking dance like nobody's watching, because they're not. The only time you dance in the working world is at weddings. And at weddings, everyone is so totally pie-eyed drunk that you can dance your ass off. And I did, grooving and juking until I'd sweat right through my necktie. I'd crash weddings just so I could get low late in the night to the B-52's Rock Lobster. I was thrown out of a wedding once in Florida by the Secret Service because I was deemed an immediate threat to an ex-president attending the same event. Sometimes I had regrets the next morning, but I also found if I danced hard enough, I was less hungover too. But once I got sober, I found it hard to lose myself completely on the dance floor. I'd still want to, badly, when Empire State of Mind would hit at a wedding reception at just that moment in the night, and all the bright young things would start waving their limbs, I'd just about leap out of my skin. But without the social lubricant of 6 tumblers of icy vodka, I always felt like some clumsy old man out there, heaving around the dance floor, off rhythm and out of touch. How do people even dance these days? Do I have to have a partner? Am I supposed to ask someone to dance? And what happens when the song ends? Do we switch partners? Oh wait, the song never ends anymore. And it turns out I'm not dancing with a partner these days. I'm kind of dancing with everyone, right? Wait, I'm actually kind of dancing with no one. Or am I now dancing with just that random dude from my table who came to this wedding as my cousin's +1? Weird. It was all too much. I couldn't handle it. And if I'm totally honest, I find the sexual frisson of a good dance session a little bit confusing. Twirling some beautiful girl around on her pins as you knock your hips against each other. What does it all mean? I fall in love easy on the dance floor. Suddenly, me and my partner in her shimmering mini dress are escaping to a hilltop villa on the Adriatic, where we'll live out our years, mostly unclothed. Can they tell I'm feeling this? Are they feeling it too? And what are you supposed to do with your boner? How rude is it to just jam it up against some slinky thigh on a deep dip? Is everyone doing this? Or am I the only one that feels that maybe it's inappropriate? Feel free to answer in the comments. Or perhaps I am just a particularly excitable boy? Thankfully, I wasn't really considering all these thoughts as I showed up for the first rehearsal for the graduation dance at one of my fellow parents' house. I was mostly just self-conscious about being the only male there, lumbering around amongst a pool of women. I have found as I've gotten older, events have become more regularly segregated. Girls' night is now like every night. And you know what? I don't blame them for wanting to exclude men. We're boorish and smelly and overweight and gross. We're hairy and self-involved and really just want to listen to ourselves speak. I don't want us around either. It took a lot for me to just drag my big-ass feet across the threshold and show up. What's worse, as soon as I walked in the door, I was asked for a progress report on the supercut. My stomach flipped. We were about 6 weeks out from graduation, and I hadn't started. The supercut was fast becoming for me a symbol of all the ways I had failed to live up to my responsibilities as a parent, all the ways I had failed to meet the limitless possibilities of my firstborn with limitless, unconditional love. What's worse, as everyone gloated about college matriculation and the choices their perfect children had made, my wife and I were still going back and forth on the financial arrangements with the college my daughter hoped to ultimately attend. I still wasn't sure how this major piece of graduation puzzle might ultimately work out. I wasn't like these women. I didn't parent by spreadsheet. Still, I promised, and half believed, that the supercut and everything else in this life would somehow come out just fine. One of the moms started walking us through the choreography for the routine. There were like 7 songs. No one had even learned the lyrics yet, and there were a lot of moves for each song. There were even more moves that the moms in charge hadn't yet worked out. It seemed unlikely the 12 of us would learn this routine, let alone somehow teach it to the 200 other parents invited to participate. On the first night, we made it through like a song and a half. I didn't hold out a lot of hope. But the other moms remained undeterred, and by the second session they were proved right as we bumbled and laughed and stretched and groaned and improvised and adjusted and somehow figured out the entire routine. We had a kind of role model to follow. Our daughters went to an all-girls school, and every year for Spirit Week, each grade would choreograph elaborate dance routines to perform for their peers. One of the parent leaders had the brilliant idea of incorporating some of the girls' more iconic moves into our own routine. There was a kind of grinding squat they'd done in 11th grade, a group move from 10th where the whole class became a human airplane, and a series of moves from their senior year that were designed to sync with the final chorus of Queen's We Are the Champions. To learn all these moves, we had to watch archival footage of our kids over the years. The first thing we discovered was that they were way better at this than any of us. Things they did easily, we struggled with our calcified joints to execute. But as we studied their moves, we got to see their camaraderie and dedication. We got to see the magic they enjoyed during high school. It was impossible not to feel some of that magic ourselves. So I found myself a little surprised when I learned a faction of parents were trying to organize a revolt against the dance. They'd even contacted the school to complain about being conscripted into the routine. One parent approached me in a restaurant near campus and informed me that there was no way she was going to dance. What's more, her husband had declared the dance a quote-unquote hard no. I couldn't understand why she felt I had some ownership or control over the dance routine. But at the same time, I found myself wanting to rise up in a full-throated defense of the dance. Despite my misgivings, I realized I was actually having fun learning the moves. Don't dance, I told her. No one's going to force you. But I now suspect my inner glow was giving off a different message entirely. By the 4th or 5th rehearsal, we started opening the session to additional parents to expand the core group that would know the moves. I noticed the new parents that joined were not just disoriented and overwhelmed by the dance moves. They were disoriented and overwhelmed by the massive change that was swamping their lives. I could hear them sharing tales of the upheaval in their homes and inside themselves as they tried to come to terms with this fast approaching close. They were overwhelmed by the storm of emotions that was roiling their households on a daily basis as they prepared their children for launch. Weirdly, I realized I was no longer feeling any of that. The crazy welter that had nearly swamped me time and time again seemed to have passed, and I was now sailing on smoother waters. I was actually kind of relaxed. What had happened? What had changed? Maybe it was the fact that I had resolved my college finances, or maybe it was the fact that I had finally started the supercut. I was like an orangutan driving a spaceship as I first tried to learn the cuts and moves on Premiere. It was a frustrating and challenging mess, but I could see how I might, in the next couple weeks, muscle it into shape, and ultimately, it played fine, if you must know. But more and more, I became convinced that my newfound state of peace was born of the dance. It seemed absurd, but could this senior serenade, I wondered, be the Wira Wall, Ukulibula of middle-aged Angelinos? In the same way the Yanomami passed their tribal wisdom on from one generation to the next through a marathon of dance, was the freedom and joy of adolescence somehow being transmitted back to us through the moves we were learning from our kids? Was I being eased into the next phase of adulthood through the healing power of dance? It seemed that way. On the day of the dance, my daughter knew something was up. She told me she didn't know what was happening that night, but I could tell from her tone she knew something strange was about to unfold. As our kids gathered on the school's sports field to practice their graduation, we parents gathered in the gym and donned construction vests, an homage to one of the girls' more famous routines. I took a picture backstage of this crazy mix of doctors and lawyers and industry professionals, now a sea of orange in the black-clad wings of the stage. All the parents were there, even the ones who complained the loudest about what we were about to do. Our kids, of course, screamed in glory as we walked on stage and started our routine, and when we moved into the V shape that would become the human airplane, I could see the girls in the front couple rows wiping away the tears of laughter and delight pouring down their cheeks. How lucky I was to have been a part of this, to have been one of these adults united in the shared purpose of raising our kids. How lucky I was to have been a part of this crazy dance celebrating their 6 years together, their pluck and their spirit. Were we somehow conjuring magic, like middle-aged shaman, using the moves that had carried our girls through adolescence to transfer to ourselves that same power of discovery, to carry with us deep into middle age? I'd like to think so. When we finished the routine, our kids stormed the stage. I could see that every parent who'd been a part of this was a little bit transformed, their anxiety about the future replaced with a kind of joy for the now. And I know this much. When my daughter threw herself into our arms at the end of the dance, giddy and proud, I found myself at total peace with her childhood. I was at peace with every choice we had made to bring us to this moment. It wasn't perfect, but I was okay with that. I was ready to move on.